This chapter of My Hero Academia Vigilantes is, how shall I say, interesting. And I can really sum it up as this: All Might is here. Alpha One is also here. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Big Blue Drew 97 here, coming at you with another manga review for My Hero Academia Vigilantes, manga chapter 92, titled Might Signal. And yes, by the title of this chapter is going to be talking about All Might arriving on the scene, going up against this Nomu-like creature, this hooded creature that O'Clock is going up against with Ripper. And is that really the case though? Because I'll get to that in the actual review, but I will say this was a very interesting chapter. I could have guessed that we would see All Might in this chapter, but the second half of this chapter was something that I actually did not expect at all, and that second part makes this interesting. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, continue watching this video and leave a like down below on it if you find it interesting, as well as subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave a comment down below. And with that all out the way, let's get started with the review. We start off this chapter, weirdly enough, with All Might coming back from a 72-hour-long hero spree where he comes in, he zooms in, and he begins talking to the reporters that are at his building, and how he talks about how he's amazing that he's able to keep up with everything, that he was born to do this, that he's so happy that he spent the past 72 hours dealing with 5 incidences, and how he gives this speech about how, don't worry, even though I'm not going to be helping, I know for a fact that there are going to be people here who will be helping in my stead while I get a little bit of rest. So goodbye for now. As he basically gives like sort of like a generic answer to the reporters, as soon as those doors shut, he's like, oh my gosh, oh, I gotta get some sleep. And what is even more interesting about this is that we see Toshinori All Might in his pajamas, as we get to also see Night Eye. Rest in peace, Night Eye. So yeah, this is very interesting because we know for a fact that this flashback is happening 7 years in the past, and that would coincide with the time where All Might and Night Eye are still on good terms. And this is very interesting because we get to see their dynamic more. We get to see that basically Night Eye is the one that handles everything that All Might does, all of his cases, everything that he does. And it's very interesting because they have this like cool rapport where All Might's like, yo, is there anything that I need to do? All Might's like, is there anything that I need to do? I'm gonna take a little snooze, but like, if there's any help, like I can jump into it. And Night Eye's like, even if there was, I would deny it. You've been doing this for a while. You haven't had any sleep. Go to sleep. I'll handle everything. It's okay. And All Might's like, thank you. Toshinori's like, thank you. And we get an interesting development here as well, because as soon as like he's about to settle in, he's like, I'm sensing something, as his little diddly dad antennas pop up, as we get these two boxes that say Might Sense and Might Ears. And apparently it's like he's sensing danger somewhere. Someone is calling his name. And what is interesting about this is that I don't think that these are any of the quirks of One for All or anything. I think that this is just inherently what Toshinori's body is. I think this is kind of the reasoning why behind the idea of like why he was able to handle the quirk of One for All so well, is because he just has these naturally like gifted senses. Like his senses are just naturally like increased to a sense where he's able to like sense danger and like hear like when something is happening. This is just all inherently to his biology, but it's not necessarily tied to a quirk. And I think that's kind of like what they're alluding to, as well as it just being a very comedic scene as well. So that is also interesting, as we see like he sees this danger, Night Eye's like, no, don't you do it. As we get to see like that there's like a signaling system for All Might in Osaka, as you have this sign that turns into All Might, you have this crab that turns into All Might, you have everything turning into All Might, as people are wondering, like, is All Might coming here? And yes, he does, because he breaks out of his pajamas. He flies to the rescue, to the chagrin of Night Eye, as we get All Might beginning to arrive in Osaka to try to fight off the danger that is there. As we cut back over to Rapper as well as O'Clock fighting off this hooded creature. And this is also something that there's nothing really like crucial for like turning back to this part. This isn't really the crux of the chapter, because basically what happens here now is that you have O'Clock basically telling Rapper, like, yo, the rabbit girl made it out. If you want to retreat, you can. You probably should. And Rapper's like, nah, I'm gonna fight. I like this guy. We're gonna fight to the death. And obviously O'Clock is like, yo, how am I gonna get him out of here? Oh gosh, this is gonna be more difficult. As most likely what's going to happen, hopefully, is that Rapper and this hooded figure will be fighting, as we have O'Clock also getting to his fighting stance, wondering whether or not he could hold off this creature until All Might arrives. Where from here, this is where we cut to probably the most interesting and most shocking part of the chapter, at least for me, because we see All Might coming in, but then we cut over to Kurogiri and All for One as talking about how, All Might's here, I guess everything's over with. He's going to try to rescue the day, everything's going to be dealt with. And this is all coming from Kurogiri as well as All for One. He's like, yeah, man, this is really, really bad. Or, is it? Because frankly, I have an actual plan to distract All Might. Ooh, what is this plan that All for One is thinking of? We don't get it explicitly, but we see that using Kurogiri, he's able to touch these individuals and do something to him. And he kind of explains what he does, as well as going into his kind of philosophy about how he views the world societies of villains and heroes. And to basically sum it up, he's talking to Kurogiri and he's like, questions like, people call us villains. Why? Why not just call us something else? Like, if they want to call us criminals that use our quirk, why don't they just call us quirk criminals? Because when it comes to like what truly is a hero, I think it's just, and to sum up what all of this is, because I don't want to read through all of it, but basically he talks about how society views villains as villains instead of viewing them as like something else. Like, why are we called villains? And All for One's ideas of heroes and villains are just very simple. He views heroes as being people who are balanced with their quirk and their will, while villains are unbalanced with their quirk and their will. And to tie a little bit more into like how we view the villains, it's like a villain is someone whose like will like overtakes their quirk in like a negative way, or the quirk takes over the person's will and causes an imbalance, and that's what a villain is. And if you're able to make a quirk and a will unbalanced, then you can make a villain. As we see like this cube crumbling, everything is crumbling. As he says this, we see the people that he touched, the people in this hall, coming out acting as villains, meaning that most likely what he did is, and this is still speculation, but most likely what he did with the quirk of All for One, man, we really need his name revealed, if anything else, because referring to the user All for One and the quirk All for One is just so confusing. But All for One most likely uses All for One to somehow make the quirk in the people unbalanced, or more specifically to run amok. And because there's now unbalance, they are now considered villains, and these villains are running through the city, causing chaos, just like causing other heroes to have to jump in, specifically Fat Gum as well as Tiger Bunny, to try and take out these new villains, as he's using this as a distraction to distract All Might. And he knows for a fact that this may take up a little bit amount of time, because once he does that, he can now watch the fight between O'Clock and this hooded figure, which is why he did this all along. He just wants to see the fight between O'Clock and this hooded figure, and also potentially get O'Clock's quirk here and now, as the chapter ends with O'Clock fighting. Well, he wants the quirk overclock from O'Clock, but we have the final part of the chapter where we have this hooded figure. He's growing, his muscles are expanding, he's getting bigger as O'Clock is looking like, yo, I got my hands filled with this one. Oh man, how will I hit? Can this get any better? As we get once again All For One saying that he wants to overclock the quirk here and now. Oh gosh, that was a weird voice crack. So like I said, this was a very interesting chapter, and like I said, I honestly believe that we may get the reveal of who All For One's face is. That's something that I've been advocating for a while, but like I said, I'm not 100% sure where this is going. Like, we all knew that All Might was going to be here, but I didn't think we were going to get the dynamic between All Might and Night Eye, showing that, yeah, they did have this kind of like fun like relationship that played off each other, but it was done very well in this chapter, and also showing that even though he's been working for 72 hours, he's still a hero. And just the comedic sense of like, oh, I have all my ears, or might ears, or might sense. I think that just is playing off the idea that he was just meant for the quirk, and that these are just things inherent to him and not necessarily tied to a quirk. So I found that interesting, as well as just getting like pretty much this other major part of the chapter is the philosophy and the ideals of All For One, and how he views like hero society to be like just a little bit weird in the sense of like naming just villains as villains instead of naming them as like quirk criminals, because that's basically what they are. Like, even though like someone uses their quirk to rob a store, they're deemed a villain instead of just being like a normal robber. Or they use their quirk out in public to be mayhem, they're considered a villain instead of a quirk criminal. We're getting more ideas like how he views society, and how, with that in mind, yeah, society is just a little bit weird, but also he has the view of like what makes a hero and what makes a villain, and how heroes are just balanced with their will and their quirk working together, while on the other hand, villains are just villains because their quirk and their will are unbalanced. Either one side is tipped higher than the other, and that's very interesting because I can see that ideal as well. And with that idea in mind, it's implying that possibly he also implies that villains are made for the most part. But I think that can also be tied into like how villains made, like you can make a villain and you can make a hero. But that could also tie into the idea that maybe people are just born villains and born heroes. You're just born with an imbalance between will and quirk, and that makes you inherently a villain. Maybe that's how Shigaraki became a villain. Maybe his just quirk and his will were just so imbalanced, his quirk wanted to destroy and he wanted to save, that he just inherently became a villain. Or another possibility, maybe All For One touched Shigaraki when he was younger and caused that imbalance in the first place, forcing him to be a villain. So this may add like a second layer dynamic between Shigaraki and whether or not he was born a villain or if he was made a villain in the form of All For One. And that may not have anything to do directly with Vigilantes, but Vigilantes does have strong ties with My Hero Academia, and I think that's very cool. And I think that's why I think it's interesting. We're getting these ideals from All For One in Vigilantes, and you would think like maybe we would be seeing that in the actual My Hero Academia like manga, but then you have to realize, well, he's not the main villain, Shigaraki is. So it's like a really cool dynamic between My Hero Academia as well as My Hero Academia Vigilantes, and how like characters are portrayed, and like what is revealed in here in one story and is eventually like maybe revealed later on in the other. I just find that very interesting, and that's why I find this chapter very interesting as well. So overall, with that in mind, I don't think that this is a bad chapter, but I think that it could have been better. We could have seen more of All Might and All For One in this chapter, and not necessarily have like a lot of focus on Rapper and Ripper until like really at the end. We didn't really need that interjection in the middle, because that kind of like tilted things a little bit more. We didn't need to know that Rapper wanted to fight this guy, because we've already known that he wanted to fight this guy, so that was really unnecessary. As well as like probably like showing a little bit more of like their dynamic and like potentially what's going to be happening could have been done better in this chapter. But I still thought it was a good chapter. I still think it's good, not great, but still good. A little bit of disappointment to end 2020 on this, but it comes out every 2 weeks, so the disappointment won't be lasting that long. So overall, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading it. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you just enjoyed My Hero Academia Vigilantes as a whole in the year of 2020. And hopefully I'll be able to see you in 2021. So leave a like on this video. Leave a comment down below on what you think of 2020 as a year and why was it literally dog shit. As well as subscribe to my YouTube channel. Do all of that cool jazz. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Goodbye for now. Oh shoot, I forgot what today is. Today is